Hey out there, Helen Hartsmith here from the Heart of the Witch's Path YouTube channel. I hope everybody's having an awesome day. I know that it's cold. It's February. It's Michigan. Acknowledge and move on. Whatever. Spring will sprung at some point. I'm coming to you today with a book review. And the book that I wanted to talk to you about is Wiccan Beliefs and Practices with Rituals for Solitaries and Covens by Gary Cantrell. Let's see if I can not get a glare from the camera. This is a very glossy book. I love this book. This book has a copyright of 2001, so it's not really a new book, it's not really an old book, but it's one that I actually came into contact with a number of years ago. And this book is actually on my list of the top 5 books that every new witch should read. That was my very first blog post on the Heart of the Witch's Path WordPress blog. I looked at this January 6th, 1914. This book was part of those 5 books that I thought every new witch should read. And that's because I think this is an incredibly well-rounded piece of information. Okay, there are over 300 pages in this book, and I'm here to tell you that Mr. Cantrell did not waste a page. Every word in this book is valuable. Everything is put together extremely well, and I felt, I don't know that I was necessarily a new witch when I found this book, but it was early in my practice, and this was probably after the time I've talked about this in other videos and podcasts. The first coven that I belonged to, when we got together and started doing rituals and studying Sabbats and all those types of things, we were very spell happy witches, baby witches, as I'd like to call us. Whenever we did ritual, everybody had a spell that they did during ritual, and, we bought spell books and poured through them and used them and things of that nature. And that's fine. It's okay to buy spell books. It's okay to do spells out of spell books. But I think what we lacked, and what we quickly realized what we lacked, was basic knowledge. We jumped in fully clothed into the pool and didn't really, change into a swimsuit or learn how to swim before jumping in the pool. If you get what I'm saying. So we made a conscious choice as a coven that, we should do some studying, and we should do it together. And, and so we took a step back and didn't do spell work for a time as we, went back and actually learned before, doing kind of a thing. And so I think it was about that time when I read this book cover to cover and took so much out of it. I mean, like I said, he does not waste a word, does not waste a page. And what I find really interesting is that in the front of the book, as books normally do, there's a list of other works by the author. And unfortunately, there's only one other book that he ever wrote called Out of the Broom Closet. And that was copyright 1998. And so I don't know what happened to Mr. Cantrell. I have no idea if maybe he's not living anymore. If anybody knows, let me know. It's nothing I ever really did any major research on or anything like that. But for someone who did such a good job on one book, I've never even come across the other book, I don't think. But I would very much like to pick it up. So that might, come in sometime. But what I liked specifically about this book is that the way that he lays out information. So the very first chapter is about definitions. He goes through and defines at least, how he defines things, of course, because this is all his perception, which is all, what most books are about. But he goes through and defines things, and he talks about, he's got a really neat table that shows, it's a representation of pagan traditions and paths. And so he kind of lays out the Confucius, you know what I'm saying? Buddhist, and how those things are all kind of under paganism, and then along with Wicca, and then under Wicca he talks a little bit about, popular traditions and things like that. So that was kind of a nice thing to see laid out as someone who was reading the book for the first time. So he starts there, and then he works into the ethics and talks about the Rede and the Rule of Three, the Wiccan Code of Chivalry, those types of things. And there's nice chapter summaries at the end of each of these chapters. So that's why I'm saying he doesn't waste a word. And then he talks about tools, a really great list and explanations of each of the tools, and doing a mirror book or a book of shadows book, clothing, and preparing for rituals and rites. I thought that section was really interesting. Then there's a whole chapter on mysteries and rituals. So there's sample rituals for the Sabbats, and he talks about Wiccan mysteries, talks about Espet rituals, grounding, and then he goes on to other rites. So a consecration rite, a dedication rite, the Great Rite, and drawing down the moon, and passage to Summerland. So it's like he touches on each of the mysteries of what it means to be Wiccan. And he covers all this before he even talks about spell work. And that I really appreciated, because it was taking you on a journey where a lot of people, might be looking for spell work, because that was kind of where I was in the beginning, looking for spell work and stuff like that. So I appreciate how far back in the book it is. There's a whole chapter on physically challenged witches. So like if someone's deaf, if someone has problems moving, how do you incorporate that into your practice? The humorous side is another chapter where he talks about the stranger knocking and candles in small spaces, just things to look out for, and kind of falls into the, don't take yourself too seriously. If that's one thing that my current coven we have taught each other, is to don't take yourself so seriously. This is your religion. This is how, this is what we choose to worship, how we choose to worship, but we're human. And so things happen. And so the goddess is okay with that. And if you mess up, and you just kind of acknowledge it and move on. So I appreciate that. There's also a few appendixes that have different versions of the Rede, and the charge of the goddess and the charge of the god. Quarter invocations. And then there's a whole section on resources, because, this was early 2000s, so it was, a little bit harder to find, your local pagan shop or whatever. But there's periodical publications in which Circle Sanctuary is listed, places to buy edged weapons and accessories. So, he really thought of a lot of things and put a lot of things into one 300-page book. And even though it was written in, the early 2000s, I don't think that the information is necessarily dated. And so that's why I think it's still certainly viable for a new witch. And so that's why it's still on my top 5 books that every new witch, heck, even a practicing witch might find some, decent information in there. And actually, this copy that I have is my second copy. The first copy that I actually read, I lent out to someone because I thought it was that good and never got it back, and felt that it was important enough that I still wanted it in my library and purchased another copy. That's how much I believe in it. So I guess it goes without saying that when it comes to my reviews, I would give this book 5 out of 5 brooms. Bam! 5 out of 5. So, I will link, if you're interested in that first blog post and want to know what the other 4 books are in my top 5 list, I'll go ahead and I'll link that below. And I'll also link, where you can purchase this on Amazon. The roomie was telling me that I should look into getting a code because I always put links to Amazon to purchase books. And I guess I never really thought about it. So if you'd like me to look into a code, then please let me know down below. So yeah, there's my book review on Wiccan Beliefs and Practices with Rituals for Solitaries and Covens by Gary Cantrell. Hope you found something interesting in this video, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video and if you want to see more book reviews. And please comment below and let me know if you've read this book. What did you think of it? Let's discuss. So until next time, thanks for walking the path a little while with me. And until we see each other again, blessed be.